Good evening to all our participants, panelists, our distinguished guest today, Mr. Raman, and we thank all the BOGs and other technical support, our esteemed members who have joined, and all our participants. As you are aware, you need to have a mandatory number of hours for the ethics as far as the CPE is concerned for qualified CIAs. And for others also, it's also a good learning session to keep ourselves up to date on ethics and governance. So today we have Mr. Raman Narasimhan, who will be talking to us on the various aspects of the ethics requirements for internal auditors. He is the Chief Risk Officer at Sundaram Finance. He was earlier Head of Internal Audit for Sundaram Finance Group. He has an experience of over 30 years as different roles such as risk management, internal audits, ethics, compliance, investigations, anti-money laundering, digital forensics, compliance requirements under various frameworks. He has also assisted in the implementation of standards for security, privacy. He has worked on impact assessments. His earlier job profiles were with Dell, PwC, TCS, and Grant Thornton, all in internal audit and forensics. He is a fellow member of the Institute of Company Secretaries. He is a graduate in law from Madras Law College, certified arbitrator, and member of Science and Technology section of the American Bar Association. He is a platinum member of ISACA with IT audit security and holds global risk certifications such as CISA, that is CISA, CISM, CISM, and CRISC. He is also a certified data privacy solutions engineer from ISACA. Apart from these qualifications, he is the founder president of the Chennai chapter of the ACFE and a qualified certified fraud examiner. He is a regular speaker at various events, not just the IIA, but the Company Secretaries Institute, the Carsten Works Institute, Chartered Accountancy Institute, law firms, etc. And he has also co-authored a book published by the IIA titled Leveraging Data Analytics for Fraud Detection, and another book, AI in Financial Services, a primer for internal audit and fraud detection. So with this introduction, I would request Mr. Raman to take over the proceedings for today. We are proud to have a very highly qualified and a very practical person today with us, and all of us look forward to hearing from him. You're also aware that if you have any doubts, you type them on the chat. The coordinator will help you out either during the session or at the end of the session. I will be there throughout, and rest of us will also be there. Thank you, sir, and welcome, Ramanji. You can take over the mic.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the intro, and it is always pleasure, to be associated with IEA every time. And I know this like a on-demand kind of, requirement for CPA and for the interest. I'm thankful again for all the IIA President, Board of Governors, and all the officials at IIA, and also to those who are helping me to even project this. Unfortunately, even now the Zoom sharing is not working, but I think Siddharth is trying to help me. So what I would suggest probably, Siddharth is sharing. What I would do is I will say I'm not going to run more on the ethical, the theory, the objectivity, professional judgment, confidentiality, but I am going to walk you through all the four pillars, through different case studies. I think I am trying to target between 20 or 30 case studies, depending on the time, depending on the interaction. You can either way, probably, you can put your question or answer or kind of a response through chat box, or maybe raise your hand, or we will see how we can work on that, right? Or at the end of the session, also the last 10-15 minutes, so we can take questions. I am kind of open. We will see how it goes well. right? In the interest of every participant. So this is a plan. See, I would love to interact at the same time, with a kind of limitation on the digital mode. We will say, but still, most of the case studies, I am not expecting a kind of a yes or no or what is the right answer or wrong answer, but the objective of all the case studies, is to trigger some kind of thought. How as CAE or part of internal audit department, you can think through. It is, I am trying to, trigger the thought process, right? Uh, this is a kind of intro or the background I want to provide before going ahead on the case studies. Siddharth, if you can help me go slides. So I'm not going to stay much time on this four pillars. All of you are very familiar, very knowledgeable on this, but still, what integrity, what we look at, what objectivity, what is the confidentiality, what is the competence. This is what we are going to go through on different case studies, right? Basically, internal auditors, we have to perform the work with, the kind of honesty, the diligence, and the responsibility. How it is not going to, yeah.
சீரியஸ்னஸ் தெரியல நீங்க நல்லா
Ravi? Okay. So idea is, on the objectivity, I would have a couple of case studies. Similarly, on confidentiality, whether, what is right, where you can disclose, where you can't be disclosing, and what is the kind of competence expected at IA level, right? This is an overview, and this anyway part of the four principles or pillars. Go on, please. Okay. So this is what I would put it on simple. If you can see on the left arrow. Sure. So if you are looking more on the left side, a person lacking confidence, self-esteem, friendship, or stability, as in fraud triangle, right? If you are looking into justification, kind of, even beyond fraud triangle, I call like, arrogance and competence also, like beyond triangle, the diamond and, the pentagon. This is what we have to know. We have to learn by looking at whether a person work with integrity or is there a kind of a balance or kind of a lacking something. On the right side, it is exactly the opposite. We'll go on. Please move on, Siddharth. These are all questions I think all of us, we know pretty well, but you may take a note. This is a kind of question we need to ask ourselves. Are we believing this is a kind of a right course of action? And I'm not going to read everything. I'm not going to explain everything. All of us quite familiar with this. But think about how I feel, in after some kind of action or even inaction. Do I feel comfortable? If we ask all this kind of questions, right, we can be very sure we stay on the line of integrity. Go next. I will run few slides very fast, but I'm going to, stay focused on the case studies. This again, signs of integrity, if we are open to feedback and we have a best practice, we know the difference between humor and hostility, we know how it is acting with integrity even when it is the most inconvenient. Go on, please. That's the most important. You can see the last two bullets, for example. Would I be kind of convenient, comfortable, embarrassed, or otherwise to read if there are any kind of news in the newspaper in the next day morning? How I would view my family member? Would they be comfortable if there is a kind of action I take which, falls unfortunately on the other side of legal and ethical? This are all kind of thought triggers I would ask you, encourage you to think about, right? As internal auditor, we have to review all this. Go next, please. So, ethics, it is the right thing to do is not always the easy thing. This is what I said in the previous slide about when we need to stay on the ethical line, when it is even more inconvenient, right? Go to case study, Siddharth. Okay, stay on. So I would allow you probably to read for a couple of minutes. There are only some 8 or 10 lines. Then I would give you a minute. Then I would try to explain about what it is. The heading itself gives you kind of a better caption what it is. Okay. So nobody got a better chance of winning than you. Is that a kind of a misleading? How many of you say mislead, or probably it breeds something? Because see here after the advertisement, the internal audited or chief audit executive, of that company, he got kind of I would say baffled because when it appears in the headline, certainly with a kind of offer, register, get a kind of holiday at Finland, watch the Northern Lights or Arctic Green. That is quite interesting, exciting, right? So no wonder number of eyeballs got increased. The company would have got a lot of business. Then you are looking at ethical. Is this misleading? This is what I am asking. Or do you perceive any kind of a risk? His problem in this case study, I am saying he was not having enough skill on marketing to assess if this is common. Though there is generally acceptable marketing standard, there is nothing like that just to have fun or humor on that. But you have to think about. So could I expect anything on chat? If you are Gopal, would you think it is okay, fair enough, or am I misleading my clients or general public?
Actually, the chat is disabled.
Oh, Saravanan or someone, Anup, Siddharth, can someone help?
Yeah, I am checking that.
Sorry, Magesh. Is there any challenge?
No, it says settings are same.
Is that enabled now?
It's already enabled, sir. 1 second.
I am able to chat.
Yeah, it still shows as disabled only.
It only says the account owner and few can enable. I mean, so for us, as participants, it's disabled.
Let them fix, but Magesh, if you would like to, respond, probably I would encourage you. You can go ahead and whatever your perception there.
Yes, irrespective of Gopal's expertise in marketing, the risk or the perception that he needs to validate here is the reputational risk from a company's perspective. Are we sending the right message even if everybody has a probability of winning? Should we better position it than making it more lucrative and facing the consequences? That's how I would look at it.
Okay, what if I say this not a misleading? Just Siddharth, can you please click?
See, I have a point here. Since
Sure,
Gopal
Vijay.
does not have the competency to assess, it's better that he can even try to get the right assessment from someone who are competent enough.
I agree. You can seek a professional expertise wherever it is required, but here, the professional kind of knowledge can come only from marketing team. And if the marketing team says this is what it has to be done, right? Then what will be the kind of situation that Gopal or whoever will have?
You may have a legal risk over there.
Okay. Let us see. Can you please click?
I don't think there's any risk here because I think marketing is always make believe. So
And now read that, read the bullet. You know, see, it is an equal chance of winning for everyone who apply, or it is not like there is a bias. It is a marketing caption. What if I say it is consistent? I am not saying like, only people who buy Economic Times or who apply, with some kind of license fee or something. Even then, if I am consistent, put a rule and do a fair play, I can always, side, or I can argue on other side. I am providing an equal chance of winning to everyone who apply or who register. It is a chance. So we have to know idea behind, as I told you initially, I am not getting into whether which is right or not, but this kind of a real life situation can happen. As internal auditors, we can't be jumping in. There could be, I do agree, couple of people you said like a legal reputation or compliance or other risk. Yes and no would be the answer because this is a case study. All the 2030 case study, please view as a storytelling only, right? I will not have full information, or in real life, you have to see multiple other factors. But with a few lines, I would say, it triggers your mind, think through what else you need to check, right? So that kind of professional judgment or knowledge or gain over a period or experience, I think more practically required. Can we move on? Okay, this here pretty small few lines only. I'll give you a minute or so. Please read it through. So this is a case study. Is there any comment before I ask question, or do you understand this, or
yes,
what in this case? I am talking about RBI issuing notice for mis-selling, and the board audit committee or risk committee or the management pulling Venkat, right? What is the kind of issue we are talking about?
Depends on what this what is programmed and what this bot was trying to sell. It's,
Okay.
that is important.
Okay.
What were the algorithms that were written and what kind of persuasions it was doing to the people who were
The algorithms were based on existing historical whatever the customer profile or the
correct.
risk profile.
So again,
All
profiling is also questionable because you can't profile customers without their knowledge. And second, profiling is not actually allowed, right? I mean, you can't take the customer history and then build your own bot with that data.
Okay.
But I've got their consent. There are some ethical
Thank
issues.
you. Any other view?
It's more around the consent and privacy and even the territorial or country specific compliance requirements, because some EU or some other countries may have other privacy obligations also. So consent is an important one. And then any new territories before opening or geographies, we need to be more careful in evaluating how that fits the overall landscape.
True. What else you can think through?
Actually, mis-selling happens even without AI, even in the normal transactions where the customer relationship managers.
Absolutely.
So it's not something which is peculiar to this.
But the takeaway I would call is whenever there is, whether it is Alexa-based voice assistant or bot or any algorithm, whether it is for new product or new geographies, how you can just, whether the systems auditor in this case whether he has been given kind of a full information, full background, or just looking into historical, when the historical profiling would not apply at all, because that is a new region, north and east region, where they would not have historical transaction, right? Or they considering it is all kind of, triggers. Like we have to look at all around what could be the possibility or vulnerability that can exist, or still we are comfortable. Like I do agree, the mis-selling can happen with or without bot. That is possible. But in this case, having invested, is it right? Are we giving a right scope to auditor or right information? Good. Can you please move on? Siddharth? Yeah, this here, quite interesting case study. Take a couple of minutes. So please read through. Okay. We are talking about, use of AI, use of whatever, Alexa type of the voice assistant algorithms. And in this case, the Narayan, leading lawyer or a customer is getting his dosa on time or every time. So, but do we have any issue? That is the question I want to ask. He is getting, I'm saying a leading lawyer filed a case for losing his privacy or even judgment for losing value for money. That is a kind of statement. But at the same time, whenever the person goes in, they say it is written something like 10 varieties of idli or dosa based on the prior experience, right? So,
That is
what
only
we talk
suggestive.
about, is there a case?
But that is only suggestive, right? It's not forcing him to buy that within the dosa or a variety of dosa or idli, right? It's just suggestive based on past purchase patterns.
Past, correct.
And ultimately, the decision is Narayanan's decision. So we can't blame the.
But correct. Also, there could be a possibility this kind of issue can happen, right? What will happen? See, the customer is not given any other option other than the same type of dosa or idli. And what if if I am the Gita Bhavan owner, if I jack up the price, because I know anyway he will come and take only his dosa, whether it is 100 rupees or 1000 rupees, right? Over a period or whatever I can jack, I can make other item not available. That could be an issue. Or be talking then on multiple your 4 pillars. That is what we need to look at. This kind of scenario can happen. This
But buyer beware is a very common thing that buyers.
Buyer beware or that kind of will not happen in all the case. And again, then probably you have to go through the kind of a doctrine of indoor management also, like what is expected to be there is expected, right? You don't expect the Gita Bhavans or whoever, breach something and don't do a kind of fair play, though it can happen. But see, buyer beware can't be, like as a kind of right, you can't do. When goes to a real legal or real kind of case, there are a lot of things at play. Move on, please. So what I mentioned in the previous case study was nothing. That could be a kind of auditor. They have to look at AI bias. I have few more case study on AI bias, but let us review at the time. But that is what end of the day you have to look at whether it can look into a data privacy issue or legal kind of any issue, or even bordering. I won't say fraud, but bordering something like that. Okay, let us move on to this appointment of CISO. Let me give a few minutes. Please go through this. Okay. So in this case, this is not a moonlighting. He is already a chief audit executive. I am saying if he can take the load of CISO, right? So what kind of issues probably you think it can be there or it can impact?
It could impact the objectivity. Probably
Okay.
it's conflict of interest. So he cannot be a CISO and a CAE as well.
It's
That's
more
good.
on the independence. I mean, as a CAE,
Perfect.
he should be an independent
Absolutely.
body than being
Self-assessment
involved in the
indirectly.
And I think here the question of competence also comes into play, because whether he's competent enough to take up that responsibility.
Correct.
If we keep independence apart, he may not even be competent to handle that role.
Absolutely. Let us see some points here. Siddharth, please click on that. See, some regulator would also prohibit dual hatting, right? So we have to look at all this, whatever you have mentioned, perfectly right. So it is not just taking extra load either with or without knowledge or temporary, but we have to be careful. Go on, please. I like this case study, only 7, 8 lines, whatever. So what's the response? What is your comment?
So I think ultimately competent people for that role should be selected. So the fact that it's women and age and all that is a bias that is introduced in that AI.
Correct. We can also look at the retrenchment and see whether the turnover has increased or decreased, and whether it's commensurates the policy. Because if the employees are retained and they're and the performance is on par, I don't think there's any.
No, but HR Ed is saying there is no such policy. You have to have only woman employee or above age of 40 or whatever, right? So how it can happen?
I mean, there's no such policy, but they ended up hiring people who are women above 40 years. Am I correct in interpreting it?
Dayal, I would say read the line 1 again. AI for recruitment in the last 5 years, right?
Yeah.
What if the AI has taken at the time of when it was implemented for whatever recruitment module, if it has taken all the new employee at the time happens to be 40 years and happens to be woman, AI bias or AI would have taken, oh, this company, I should think only recruit a 40-year plus and only woman. And nobody would have taken notice of that.
Understood.
Agree?
Okay. Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Possible?
Yeah. So it's basically AI bias wherein it's called
Correct.
by the, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it takes based on our behavior, right?
Correct.
Yeah, move on, say that, please. Okay. This could take a couple of minutes for you to read, but please go through. And I am saying you are chief audit executive of Tesla. Beware of Elon Musk. So my question, it is pretty simple. Something happened in California, killed 2 people at a county, and the driver of the company, or faced several years in prison. There are some case laws, AI case laws. If you want to know further on AI bias, or how you have to ask internal auditor, how you need to look, you can get in even American law, American bars. There are a couple of law digest or forums available. A lot of very interesting case studies are available. But coming back here, you think it is a driver's mistake or mistake by road users? I think there are a couple of more options. Can you please click?
Yeah, actually, this technology is not yet fully matured, right? I mean, it's still
No,
under
it
test
is
phase.
kind of
across the
operational
world.
there because the
Yeah.
government has given the green light, right? It is not, I won't say it is fully operational because it is manufactured. It has gone through whatever testing, the license been given. Safety administration or whoever in charge of transport, they cleared.
I think probably when it says without manual controls, that's where the issue is. Even if the driver wants to do something, he needs to have the manual control that can override the auto control.
True.
Right.
But if you again Google for what happened with the same Tesla car,
It's not
it is
allowed. Yeah.
self-driving, not driverless car.
Yeah.
There is a difference between these two. You can see what happened recently in China, I think a month back also.
Yes.
Though
Yeah.
there are kind of a, override option on self-driving, still there are issues. But
It did not work
whom
actually.
you
In
will
China,
pick?
it did not work. It did not allow the driver to override the auto control, and it speeded up at very high speed and ended up.
It's an experiment,
Harming.
but unfortunately, it resulted into a big accident.
Accident, correct.
I
So
think
it again
one way,
depends. Yeah.
one way to look at it is to draw a parallel from an aircraft. In aircraft, we have something called an autopilot system, but the pilots can also take charge of the aircraft whenever they feel it is needed. So I think something like that would be helpful.
True, but going back to our IA, the responsibility, accountability, review of what kind of control are we on the right side of the compliance? There are a lot of factors, right? It is all programmed, but how competent your auditors are? Who checks? What kind of you call in a normal application UAT? It could be much different here, but what kind of testing has been conducted? And go back to AI bias. Similarly, what kind of bias, how we identify, because the thermal sensors, whether it is in, whether you call 1 meter range or well within 1 meter or much beyond, whatever distance, how it is checked.
Yeah, the
And
variables
can
are
you
too high,
say-
right? In this case,
No,
sir.
yeah, correct.
Sorry.
No, I just said the variables are too high here because again, there was also a report wherein it said hackers are now very active in trying to hack the Tesla's cars because they can remotely start accessing and they can hijack the car and
Yeah, you can drive, you can start anywhere, you can program everything from there, you can access to, because the mobile or whatever it is connected, they can try to connect through other device as well. Absolutely possible. So
Yes.
what as a company management they are taking care, and what as CAE of that kind of company, probably how he or she needs to gear up. That is the kind of trigger I want to, instead of answering to any of the question. Things are changing rapidly as we speak, right? It is no more traditional kind of audit. In risk-based audit, there could be a different type of risk what we are looking at. It is not just the financial risk where we could be very familiar on the numbers, but it is not just numbers.
Yeah, but I think, the other
No,
point is that autopilot failing is also a risk. So we need to have a
absolutely.
backup
Quite
to
possible.
manual
The
controls.
company is still liable. If you ask me, it is not just driver putting across, putting 7 years or 1 year. The company management still accountable, liable, or they need to answer it. It's them in several ways. Let us move on. Pretty simple, I think. Give you a couple of minutes for you to read. So, any comments? I think there would be another couple of lines, Siddharth, if you can click. Yeah.
I think making use of the expertise that is available in the audit department is also important.
Okay.
So if some junior person is certified in that area, taking his inputs and discussing it through would have helped.
Okay. So how many of us probably think about doing a ROSI type of, return on security investment? It could be on your firewall to anything, including on infrastructure, on the perimeter controls. This is what expected, right? Otherwise, end of the day, there could be a kind of rather what happens in many or different organization, kind of a blame game. Why IA people, they have not reviewed at the right time or not looked at the right risk. Any other thoughts? Okay, let's move on. This part of the story, I think the transition was not properly fixed, but that is okay. That's a kind of, you can look at objectivity to, can you go back to previous slide, please? Yeah, there are multiple factors on the 4 pillars. If the IIA is not inclined probably to take a junior or take a help from other department or professional experts, this what going to happen. End of the day, it could be too late to cut down any excessive or any non-required, non-relevant kind of expenditure. Go on, please. Yeah, I'll give you next couple of minutes. Please read. How many of you read this kind of, provisions or disclaimer or exclusions in any policy?
Not recently, sir, long back.
Okay. So what is the comment? What do you think? If you are the IA of that kind of a role of Aparna?
It's a very difficult situation because wind and flooding as a consequence of that storm
Okay.
both together can cause the damage. So unless we have a very specific opinion that water had no role to play, it was only the wind, it'll be very difficult to.
Just for example, though we don't get hurricanes like in the US, what if there is no water, no rain, no surge of seawater or anything? Do you think it is still applicable?
Yeah, because what is excluded is only water, right?
They actually, it could be different. There could be this kind of exclusion or provisions. Maybe they're in the policy, but by and large, the regulator or the court, I don't think they will allow. So it is a pure one-sided. So we have to think through the policy holders how they will prove, or like what you said, it could be without rain or without water. There could be even no rain, but the water from a lake or some other place, whatever, it can surge, it can create a damage. So it can't be possible to have this kind of exclusion. So the audit head or audit team should look into from the legal perspective, because it can create if it is America or if it is Europe or other country where the compensation, law of tort, the kind of, the comp could be something different. It can run in $1 million for damages, right? So it is good how it is, instead of say professional judgment, what kind of additional knowledge or expertise the internal audit should get in and take assistance wherever required. Let us move on. So what's the view? If you are the IA head, do you think it is accepted?
I mean, is the case ongoing for derogatory comments, or was those comments passed within the court hall? I mean, I'm not able to
So
make that.
they are taking exception. Okay, it is a privileged, it is within the court, it is part of the court.
Correct.
Though it is not exactly court proceeding, but still the defamation is not acceptable or not applicable, right? Siddharth, can you click?
Because if it's within the court's jurisdiction, I think the competent person or the judge within the court should take that call, because again, it is like you said, it is privy and
Can you click again? Sorry, go back then. So, but nothing wrong, right? If say the internal auditor or can talk to the sales or legal aid or whoever this kind of people, talk to them and try to counsel why unnecessarily getting into other risk or damage. So there is always possible, right? How they approach is sometimes it is not you put a risk control matrix for everything. This happened in the recent past, I think, in a couple of months back, in a very leading, I don't want to tell which company or brand, but it happened a couple of months back in a very leading manufacturing company. Go on next. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Please go through.
no, clearly this is a breach, sir.
Okay. Let us wait for other views. Bhaskar or anyone who want to attempt?
I think, yeah, I don't know if there's any other way that XYZ could have obtained these details in an acceptable manner.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any other, reliable legal source through which this can come. So the only way is somebody must have leaked it from ABC.
Okay. Siddharth, can you just click? What if it is social engineering? That's a kind of, blind trust or information thinking, okay, something happened, or they need to provide some information, whether it is Ganesh or Krishnan, whatever. But this type of information leakage or attempt through, can you go back? Yeah. Social engineering or mystery shopping. I don't know how many of you are practicing as part of internal audit. Even RBIs and SEBIs of the world, they permit mystery shopping. They do ask compulsorily, are you doing mystery shopping? For any regulated entity, whether it is a bank or NBFC or mutual fund, or not mutual fund, whatever applicable. Similarly, IRDA and SEBI as well. So it is good as internal auditor, you practice your kind of, skills, get team members, train them on typical social engineering and typical mystery shopping. There is a kind of slight difference between mystery shopping as well as social engineering. But what will happen, the biggest risk, if your team is not equipped directly to do with the mystery shopping, for example, it can boomerang on your company. That is the biggest risk. So you have to tread that with extreme cautious approach. That is the biggest risk, because somebody trying to, pose as if like a client or customer trying to gather information to see how really the information is coming out. At the same time, if the other person is smart, they can find out. But in fact, if you know RBI guideline or even the IRDAs or whatever, they themselves carry out mystery shopping or social engineering on regulated entity. What I am trying to say is like SEBI, for example, or RBI or IRDA, they appoint auditors or their own team, and then they come as customer or whoever it is, and then they do a mystery shopping. So that is the kind of I would say movement, or the kind of approach regulators are doing. So it is good as internal auditors, we should also certainly hone this kind of skills, try to move forward, right? Go on, please. Yeah, this is a small but interesting case study. Take a couple of minutes. Read through carefully. I try to place a couple of information here on a different tone or no.
I mean, I don't see how resetting the password would help, because her email address is still compromised, right?
Okay. I will wait for others, Let us see if there are any other comment or view.
And again, how the bank operator knows that whoever is calling now is Arkirta's,
That is
she is
perfect.
she is the one who's calling, right?
Exactly.
they-
That is the breach it happened in this case. Can you please click Siddharth? The fraudster tricked you and the banker, convinced the banker existing number per record was maliciously changed. So requested. The story goes like that, right?
Yeah.
Banker thought Akirta was speaking and requesting an update in mobile, and the fraudster trick clearly, okay, my email was hacked, though he is the person who hacked, and then change the mobile. So he gets the OTP. All this happens.
Yeah, they should have asked
So-
to identify the personality first,
Exactly,
right? Some
exactly.
queries.
Exactly. But not everyone in real sense or reality it is happening over. That's where the kind of, the issues are happening. And also how really the customers are, how as auditor we are careful in educating the people if we have a kind of this kind of organization where we face customers. That is important. So it is a continuous kind of alert as auditor, I would say, what kind of, scenarios, what kind of beyond red flag kind of scenarios can happen. Can I move on? So this again on AI. Take a couple of minutes. Give another 1 more minute.
Yeah, clearly it is a AI bias because it is restricting the outcomes.
Right. How many of you know the tunnel case study, or if you have, listened to me in the last whatever few years?
Yeah, I've heard, sir.
Okay. See, what if you are in a kind of this kind of self-driving or even driverless cars, pass through a tunnel and end of the tunnel, just before the kind of when exiting the tunnel, the car spots couple of people, say it could be a lady or it could be a kid or it could be even an animal. And what if, either there is only one way, either try to swear the car to the left or right, then the kind of a risk of getting injured because the tunnel has got a wall or whatever, right? You get crash into that and you will get an injury, or you go and hit the animal or the kid or whoever they pass by. Unfortunately, if they are happen to be either within the control limit, right? What will happen now? See, it all the programmers in their application, in their mind, how they sense it or how they want to, put a control, how good we are to audit. But we are talking, it can be too advanced for our countries or our situation. I think if we look into what is the kind of technological advancement, our country, either it is already the kind of a digitization is going on, or planned in the couple of years. Whatever internal auditor or even the CAs or lawyers, I think we need to refresh ourselves. It's going to be a tough time otherwise. And one example I have said, like, New York landmark AI bias case. It prompts because there is a gender bias also there in America, right? And you have a case law, as I told you, you have several sites where you can look at what are all the AI-based case laws that are pending before several courts. It is not going to take much time to come to India, need not be on the car or road, but it can be on any other program or any other kind of utility, whatever we are trying to take. So it is time now we have a kind of forward looking, what else we need to think through. That is pretty important. Go on, please. So I'll give you a few minutes. Try to read that. So any comment at this time or want to take another minute or so? You can take 1 more minute. I have a lot of time.
Again, the analytics is all based on the historical data, right? If some new kind of fraudulent activities are coming up, how would the analytics help?
Okay.
There's,
The point
there's
is
nothing
valid.
about,
I will. Yeah. Dayal.
there's nothing about any predictive analysis here. It's mostly.
So how predictive will work? What basis again? You know,
In the
if you
sense,
have,
it should also include the current transactional data to identify it at the go, right? I mean, instead of waiting until the data is churned, it should be more concurrent and predictive.
Okay, but if auditor, for example, in this case, Chitra, right? If she is not very sure on data accuracy, you may know the principle of garbage in and garbage out. What is there existing? You're not going to manufacture the data for more accuracy, right? Siddharth, can you click? One more click. Read this couple of bullets. Actually, the third bullet from the bottom is what we are supposed to do. And what Chitra would have done, a little bit slight deviation. So again, like a bias, you're going to get a lot of false negative and, false positive, wasting the time.
So she would have collected data only for the fraud profiles that she had identified.
No, the step, it is defined in the from the bottom, the third bullet. Obtain the data first, then do the cleansing, data cleansing, analyze, verify, then build a profile of potential fraud. What will happen? You start first fraud scheme,
that's it.
then
Yeah,
look
correct.
into you're already kind of looking at blinded in a different way. You want to
Correct.
flavor it with some kind of fraud scheme. You will not know the whole picture.
Correct.
Right. This is small difference, but how many of us really are able to look into, because sometime what will happen in any organization, or there is a head of analytics or head of technology or head of something, they take, and unfortunately auditors are given a kind of a post-mortem view or only a usage view. And then the information, what will happen, it can make falter into any decision they make and result into the false negative or missing anything.
But the one other
Yeah.
point is that, I mean, it's also very difficult to build a profile of all possible frauds
Yeah,
that can happen.
agreed. But that is the historical. When you said historical plus predictive, that is where the historical, what is the company is dealing with, what kind of fraud, what kind of current red flag, and it is a evolving exercise. You can't put a full stop, because if there is a change in environment, change in design, automatically you have to relook at. It is a continuous kind of exercise. You can't be satisfied. I have all these schemes, whatever possible.
Correct. Could never be fully on top of things.
Okay. Can you move on, please? Let us take a couple of minutes on this.
Can we say these are inadequacies in testing?
Okay. That's a point, valid point. Any other views?
Maybe there were lacunas in documenting the life cycle of the development process within. Because whenever there is any scope change or scope creep, it always points out to the lack of
But
documentation or formalized.
think about what will happen if there is a scope change or scope creep. You are talking about a digital transformation with AML or any kind of advanced system, right? And if that is changing the environment, whatever they are currently in or looking at, it can also provide a different test and also look at the line, the UAT, the last background line. You never notice the UAT testing was on sample provided. So where is the independence, or where is the kind of a big set of, I won't say big, at least a kind of a reasonable set of sample data for testing? See, your IT team or the application development team or whoever on digitization, they clear it and they provide the same data. Invariably, it is going to be the same result.
They should have done a regression
Going to
testing.
find
Actually.
anything. Sorry, I missed you.
No, they should have done a regression testing wherein they should have gone back to see what other system functions got affected because of the change in scope.
Yeah, possible. And why they allow, or why they have not predicted it in the beginning, or why they have not given a kind of, threshold. Okay, this valid for 6 months or 1 year. Normally on advanced AI project or digital projects, so what they do, at least they will hold it for, a reasonable period. Say in 1 year, they won't be taking, that could be a new project coming in, but not reviewing or redeveloping or designing the same what was initiated. That is going to create a lot of problem, both at audit, the IT control, the IT perception, the risk, or even the end user level, what they are looking at. So they put a kind of, stop, say, next 6 months, I'm not going to work. If you have something new coming up, let us do as a separate one, instead of touching upon reworking on the project level at the multiple stage. The other issue on UAT and reliance on systems auditor. So you have to look at the scope given, the kind of samples given, the kind of independence. If you want to rely on, I'm sorry. If we want to rely on the so-called systems auditor, how good? Otherwise, if the IT team is going to control them, it is nothing but self-assessment, right? Are you okay with that? Then otherwise, the kind of a risk are going to, zoom much ahead.
Correct. I think that's the key point.
Yeah,
They were
the
using data
respective
from the IT.
functions need to decide what they need to test. Different scenarios need to be determined by the different functions and not by the IT team who has developed it.
Exactly, because it will become a self-assessment. They want to, get a checklist, get cleared, put a stamp. Okay, auditors cleared it.
Sir, but is there one more point where here we mentioned that the UAT was done by an external systems auditor,
Okay.
but they relied on the samples provided by the internal IT team.
Okay.
So is that an issue?
Yeah, that's right.
Because they should have used their own
Right.
samples, or
Yeah.
so that it covers all the possible scenarios rather than
Because
just.
they are controlled. They are controlled.
Right.
What I am
Yeah,
trying to
correct.
say, the independence is gone.
Correct.
So you want to get a clean sheet, that's all. That is a kind of objective, but as internal auditor, nowadays you look at RBA, you look at SEBI or IRDA, the three major regulator, all are looking deeper into this. How good is your application control review? How good is your cyber? How good is your data security, internal audit? You call any, whether it is SEBI LOD or risk-based audit or whatever name you call, end of the day, head of audit is responsible, whether you outsource or co-source or you do yourself. So this is a trigger for you look into all the pillars, whatever applicable, and see how we can, grade upon our requirements. Go next, please. Yeah, let us take a couple of minutes. So what are we looking at? How many of you, I'm sure you know, act of God or supervening impossibility and force majeure.
But is there a difference
What?
between force majeure and act of God? It's supposed to be the same, right?
No, I think the force majeure is a broader definition, whereas act of God is only restricted to natural
Exactly.
forces.
You are
Okay.
perfectly right. Perfectly right. I was about to come to that. And what I would request all of you is try to go through this. You can try to get in any of the contractual kind of provision or information in the Google. It will explain you with example, but when you look into your at least critical SLAs where it is documented, if you work in particularly IT company or financial service kind of insurance or whatever, I think it is more important how we are careful on the legal provisions. Then at later point of time, we can't be pleading, okay, it is act of God and not force majeure, or it is not going to work out because certainly the legal interpretation could be different, and what is the definition, how we work into, how we are reviewing it, there are much difference on that, right? My suggestion is take time to understand few key legal terms. Go on, please. Yeah, we'll take few minutes.
Again, the recommendation has come from the vendor himself. We should be picking up someone who are independent, right? Not recommended through the vendor.
True. What else?
Again, it's all in the language that we don't understand. At least all the documents and other audits should have been in the language that we understand.
Absolutely right, because what happens if you know from the legal battles, particularly related to cloud, you can see the data could be of a particular, a corporation registered, say it is Indian company, and the server, maybe like in this case, example, it could be in Poland. The owner of the company, if you imagine some other country, say Russia, for example, now after Russia, Ukraine, or Poland, whatever it is, it's going to be even tough. Whether you can, even if there is any need, regulatory or kind of investigation, or want to review the control, it is not going to be that easy. So when there is a cloud kind of particularly if it is not on-prem or private cloud, you are going to be, you need to have as an internal auditor, you have to be pretty careful. And it is not easy as just like what Vagita was mentioning, take a recommendation just like that, right? It is not right.
Sir, but is it related to anyway related to this SOC2 or SaaS? Because normally what happens is these cloud enterprises have these auditors, go through their systems and it's publicly available and they share it with their clients. So isn't that
it is to some extent, I would say they all by and large they cover, but not again. Imagine you have a Microsoft Azure or a IBM or anything. It is not, you have a limitation on the container, right? It is not possible to open beyond, because if your company size is smaller, probably it is let out to other companies. You have a difficulty in auditing, you will look at only a typical few items of ITGC. It depends on your auditor, I would call that way. They may have a scope or may have a limited scope. Or anyone, if Anup or Siddharth or Ravi, would you like to just add on?
Sir, one more thing, the security controls, is it jurisdiction dependent, or whether it's done in Poland or here, the security controls that get
It is
verified
not
will be
in
the same?
jurisdiction because the local law of the land applies, right?
Okay.
You put any kind of SLA, any kind of a master service agreement, but on the top of it, that could be a local law that can, unfortunately, if it override, then will be into challenge.
Okay.
So your legal head, your internal audit team, or your whoever IT service in charge, they need to be careful. So when they select a cloud service provider, they need to look at all this. What if kind of constraints would be the better, way of moving on to that. Move on, please. Yeah, so a couple of other points. Okay. I think for a change on financial risk or cutoff assertion.
In this case, checking just the invoice wouldn't be sufficient, right? Whether the sale has actually, in this case, checking just the invoice. In this case, checking just the invoice shouldn't be sufficient. Probably they should check another supporting document as well to see whether the sale has actually happened. If this is
You're
a
right. There are a lot of other ways how you can check on this. Can you click? If we are, you can easily look into the loading time, for example, the exit pass. Certainly, there should be a kind of CCTV at the security gate. And if they have a kind of warehouse, probably exist at some other place, if they invoice from that location or invoice from here, but movement of goods from a different warehouse at a different location, but many of the time, particularly, the audit department, either they will not have information, not that they will not have knowledge, but if the information is communication is poor, that's going to be a control issue. And this is an area where people do the kind of fraud, right? And imagine if it is all related to, as in this case, performance. What will happen? They will zoom whatever performance required and say, okay, you're in kind of a bonanza. That's it. This happening everywhere, more, but as auditor, if you know what kind of controls exist, what kind of testing is happen, I'm sure your statutory auditor will also look at, but internal audit is how you can gear up. That is the kind of takeaway on this case study.
I think in this case, an external confirmation is also required, because we can always ask balance confirmation from your clients. Because in one of my audits, I came across a situation where all these documents were available and they were sent on a sale on return basis. So once the cutoff date was over, all the goods came back actually.
Absolutely possible. You're right. It's quite possible.
Sales return.
Move on, please. Let us take a couple of minutes. I think 3-4 paragraphs. This is an interesting case study. So let me know when you are ready in a comment.
I think the calories, glucose level and all would be based on the data that we feed, right? The smartwatch cannot analyze on its own.
Okay, but for this case study, I'm looking at a different issue. Say, what if a person like Priya, who is head of audit at a wearable product company, we are talking about a typical OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, rather, because I'm talking about if the materiality or confidence level at 90%, because certainly in the product, they are going to mention, don't rely for your BP or heart rate or anything, right? 90, sorry. Like 90 or 95% confidence level. So as a auditor, are you going behind looking at a small kind of even the number? Because, in variable, one of the disclaimer, if is certainly we know even you go not just wearable, go to a lab or check for a blood or BP. It's not going to be the same even in the next minute. It's dynamic. So is Priya is justified doing going for investigation, comparing with other smartwatch, or is she like looking into productivity issues or any other control, or just because of OCD? So this where we need to focus on audit like materiality. That is what I am coming to here.
But there could also be a situation where, she says that when she eats an oats breakfast, the numbers appear on the higher side. So has it been designed in such a way that, it promotes people to eat junk food and shows lower values and kind of
Yeah, I like it. It
rejects?
is interesting, but it is all possible. But takeaway is look into materiality, because you will have a team, you will have a resource, you will have your budget, but where you want to focus. That is the kind of point I would like to. That is where I said objectivity and be smart, right? There could be other, if there is a fraud risk, or if there is a issue with a legal or competitor related issue or people risk, rather the CAE should first focus that, instead of already if there is a 90 or 95% accuracy, why look at several kind of a device and look into where is my 1% kind of a, negligible deviation. It could be on different parameters. So I think that is what I will look at it. Move on, please. Sorry for a lot of contents, but this is an interesting one. So how many of you read about Gen Alpha?
No, sir, I have not.
That's interesting, and as mentioned in the couple of bullets in the bottom, Gen Alpha is not the Gen X or the millennials or whatever. It is born in the early and mid 2010 or 2010, and yet to be born, that is up to 2024. But whether we like it or not, or say fortunately or unfortunately, they decide in many cases whether you want to travel or whether you want to board in which school or which flight or which car to buy, which color of mobile phone to anything. Uh, whether with the permission or not, I think they decide. So my point is, this kind of on the fly kind of decisions that happens, and if the business, the head of operation or whoever, if they are not swift, they look into the traditional mode of looking into find out what are all the process control, look into SOP, looking into risk control metrics, everything. Will you be ready? That is the kind of trigger I'm asking you. Sorry? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think we are also talking about agile audits and all, right? So if the business and the environment is also changing that way, we also need to be dynamic, right?
True. Agree. Dynamic at the same time, we should have a kind of what are the critical or showstopper kind of control, the lack of control rather, if it exists or where improvement is required. It's a big game. See, the business can't afford to lose that at the same time as the internal auditors, or how we can look at. That's a kind of tricky thing. But the report is quite interesting. You can go through that, and top 3 influencing country includes India. Go next, please. Yeah, there is some info. No. So, what's your take? Just to kind of get an interest, I mentioned M square, but I'm not talking about G square to anything, right? You have to know the risk of the difference and also the risk of business WhatsApp. That's the kind of I would say information what as auditor we need to know. We can't be taken or right, otherwise compliance issue or it could be a regulatory kind of data leakage or data access, non-protection, non-compliance. All this can come in. there are some kind of drawbacks in the business WhatsApp. You can't be taking it right like it is fully secured, 200% secured, or nothing like that. Okay, move on, please.
So I have a doubt, sir, with this regard. I'm just trying, I mean, it's just a off question, but off late, I mean, not off late, I mean, at least for the last 2-3 years, we've almost every odd day, we come across this data breaches that happens in these companies, big companies, right? Where, including banks, where, you know, the customer details are being leaked or, you know, hacked and sold in the deep net. Have you come across any cases where the customers have sued these big corporations or even governments taking any actions? Because we only hear the news, but we're not sure what happens after that.
I don't want to go, I can't go very deep into that, but basically two things. So one, in India, I have compared our laws with particularly on information or cybersecurity and data. There was a couple of books outside, or I was part of American Bar Association on this cybercrime laws comparison across the world, how it is there in the Western world as well as Asian countries. Our laws are pretty good, I would say. It is as good like you call the Western world also. The only thing we lack is on enforcement. Second, I would call is we are shy to admit, first of all, is there a breach? You would not be seeing the breach on Indian companies not much often, right? And okay, there could be exception, but it may be happening everywhere or wherever there is a kind of a leakage or control issue, but we are shy of admitting. If what will happen if the company is shy, also internally not ready, it is not going to enhance or put across robust control. That is a challenge. There are some enforcement, there are some actions also happening. I think with the recent bill that has come, they are going to, I believe they are coming with, top like 500 crores kind of penalty also for data breach. We have to wait and see how the enforcement or how the court they are going to view. It's still new. I would request Ravi to probably unmute, and if you can provide your views, that would be great.
So Raman, the question is how far we are in touch with regulators and how far we can help them out so that our business also gets smoothly done. It's always a challenge. We say the regulators are not on our side, etc., but they are more based on issue based, and then they come up with these regulations. So how far we can keep best practices in ahead of.
So I think it works nowadays. Many you would have seen like going to RegTech to on fintech company, or it is becoming proactive. It is becoming collaborative. The regulators are in touch. What kind of issues can happen? What kind of mechanism they can build around? All this are happening. I think it is evolving. It is a space, but as auditors, probably it is we need to educate ourselves well. If we don't know what is the kind of a risk probably arise, the scenarios arise, I don't think whether regulator is good enough or not, or how we are ready, on our objectivity, how we can safeguard our interest and the customer. I think I would go in that way.
No, my question is what happens if there is no regulation, Raman?
That is even best. You need to prove yourself for your own. It is not because of regulator is showing you a kind of stick and you need to comply. But as a best practice, I would say, why not I be the top and showcase to others, right? So I don't look for regulator. I know my customer is important. My data, I protect that data. I want to, because they trust me, isn't it? Does this answer your question?
No, but the challenge is the data is all over the place. So even if the privacy bill comes, who's owning the data, right? even though the source of the data is with you and has gone to somebody else, but how are they going to really track it? These are some regulations questions which are coming out even of the latest bill. So this is ethical dilemma, which is the heading, or always keeps, my worry is how do you really track some of this? And how can you really pin the real breach and what happens? Okay, breach is there to stay. You have to be resilient enough to survive all this, but then how do you really track some of them?
That is a really a good challenge, I would say. But if the organization or where you advise, if they have a mechanism and putting across really segregating who is the data custodian or where all the data is used. For example, I have seen cases where stale folders or files. Why that has to be there? Then what is the company's, either you call on one side retention of data, then next cleaning up, or when a person exit also still there are folders exist in the name. So basically I would say they need to dive deep what exactly they have control. They have a mechanism to look at the data. If they don't have that kind of data control mechanism, it is quite tough. The data processor, one thing again, I would say the data controller, and that flows from multiple, it could be internal, external, or, whatever the data comes in. The responsibility is still when you handle as a company. I think the accountability and responsibility can't be wiped off, because as a company, for example, we need to, many of the service company or the banks or insurance, all this, we have adequate, I would say, one side we will see controls, but what if on the legal or reputation risk, if the brand is kind of impacted? I'm looking at business, right? So it is a tough question, but end of the day we have to look through on several angles.
So I have another question.
Yeah.
So what is the current legal position on employers seeking employees' Aadhaar number as a mandate?
I think see, it is Aadhaar. I need to check probably, but I think it is, if they capture, if they collect information, they have to store with the, at least redact that. They can't keep everything open. That is a condition which all the regulators they prescribe. They can collect, but ensure it is not visible open enough.
Okay, but is there any justification to ask that data, because there are several other means by which they can establish the identity of the person? So my question is Aadhaar the only way, or is it mandated? Because I don't think it is a personal information again. And why would
you can agreed, but if the company, that is where you need to negotiate. Why Aadhaar? If I am able to prove, example is KYC, you can give instead of Aadhaar whatever other kind of information on address proof. It is PAN plus, that is, it is not just Aadhaar. They didn't say about PAN or Aadhaar. It is PAN plus one another residential or other identification. So
yeah.
I would go in this way, but Aadhaar is altogether different point. Ravi, would you like to take this question, or would you have any comments?
So I had this question yesterday with the bank also. Bankers have been insisting Aadhaar with the.
So I'll give you another example, because recently I
right?
came across a Big Four in India. I mean, it's a huge company. I mean, obviously, it is one of the top 4 IT companies. They have this policy wherein, I mean, they have at least 30 to 40,000 people applying for that company every month. So they've brought this mandate telling that you cannot even apply for a job without the Aadhaar. And just imagine this company collating 20, 30,000 Aadhaar data. And I'm 100% sure that they have connections within the government, and they will overnight collect all the attributes of these 10 or 20,000 odd people and have their own database. So I was just wondering the ethical, question of why would they require the Aadhaar card for a basic, even attending an interview for that matter. And second, I also went to the bank a couple of months ago, and the cashier very clearly told that I cannot draw more than a certain amount of money as per RBI rules. And in order to, enhance my withdrawal limit, he said I need to provide 3 years, IT returns to show what is my spending pattern. So I was curious about that also. I mean, have you come across such scenarios in your day-to-day affairs?
That is new to me. I'm not sure why they are asking all that. So we have to, as data owner for that example, whether individual or business, they need to think through, am I risking or am I comfortable? That is a very basic question they need to ask. If they are kind of, probably feel it is not correct, or, you have a question on why they need to and how they will store what kind of a risk passing on to several people, then I would rather advise not to get trade on with that kind of companies. But it's a tough call,
Tough call, yeah, because I tried this and it happened both in the nationalized bank as well as in a private bank.
That is strange. At least it is new to me. Let us move on. I think in the interest of time, Siddharth, if you can move to slide, I think. Yeah, it is just a more of information because we are talking about Messi, and I found some interesting information on rather internal audit, how it could have helped Barcelona club, right? It failed in spite of, the profit or kind of intangible assets, all that in big numbers. But why they lost it? Because of financial control, because of very poor cash flow management. And this is not a case study, but it is information, but how we can look into cash flow, how we can look into swapping. There are some interesting information if you look at, so it's more of information at this time. So with this, I think the case study session is done. But, I have a different point, Dayal, and because we are talking about one side on data protection, one side, people open up on social media and they don't know really what kind of a risk that exists, right? And if we are on, say, Facebook, for example, or Insta, how many of us know how many security control? Facebook, for example, provide, I think my last count was around 123, if I remember right. It could be now 100 or it could be 200 also. But all of us or many of us would not be having, controls beyond 10. You include both privacy and security. So are we blaming Facebook or Insta? Or what will happen if you apply all the kind of controls, say beyond 10, beyond 20, or like don't allow friend of friend or view of a public? You will not be posting anything in social media. You will exit from social media. Your data is fully protected.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say that these are actually, they are basically into human engineering, because if you look at the latest reports out of the US, clearly both Twitter as well as FBI were behind the scenes sharing the entire database with CIA and FBI in the name of security without informing the, the users.
Custom data owner. Yeah. No, that happens, but not many of us in the kind of excitement, okay, I want to post where exactly. But as auditor, I was talking about even mystery shopping and investigation in the earlier slide, right? You go to Facebook, people, post, particularly Insta, no more Facebook, right? We are talking about, posting hot as quick as like you go to a place like Kashmir, or you go to any other tourist, or go to even a mall, buy something, you post immediately. You were so excited, you want to post.
That is human engineering. Yeah, that is human engineering, because basically that is what they want, because you are the product there. For them, you are the product. Facebook is just an interface for them. Yeah.
But for me also, I look into for investigating if there is a fraudster, normally the mindset work otherwise, right? They will not think, okay, somebody is looking at all social media posts or pictures, whatever it is. You get on the spot with the time, the bad they are, with a kind of, evidence. It helps
Absolutely.
on the other side, but if we need to be careful on data, better to be out from social media. That is what I would say.
Yes, in fact, our income tax department are sending out notices based on FB post. When these, people evade tax and buy costly items and post it on
Exactly.
Facebook, they are sending notices based on that.
Exactly. Social media for investigation, internal audit and forensic investigation, it assists a lot. That way, I would say. But if people like us, we need to be cautious, better be out from all this. That is what it is better. We can take that way.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I'm done. I would hand over to Mr. Paul. Thanks for this opportunity. Any questions later, probably you can reach out to my email or my mobile or something. Always, I will be happy to have interaction with you people. So.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for a very informative, particularly the case studies, which were very helpful. Just thought I'll clear up a few doubts. So one is on the cloud audit. Somebody had asked whether an SOC, actually there's a 1 and a 2, it's sufficient because SOC is more on the AICPA's SSA 18 principle. So almost everything is covered and the evidence required there is the same as ISO 27000 wherever it's applicable. So if you have a good SOC audit certificate, that's sufficient. But certain regulators like the IRDA specify you must have a right to audit clause in the cloud service agreement. Then the gaps alone have to be audited. There was another question on WhatsApp, one of the case studies on the WhatsApp evidence, and the Supreme Court has ruled that WhatsApp data is not evidence. Now the data leak part of it is WhatsApp can be encrypted, so it's always encrypted, but if it is leaking out, it is through the groups. So that needs basically, somebody said social engineering is more of system design. On the data safety part, we have two components, data at rest and data in motion. And today the encryption methods are completely changed. So data can be encrypted, stored, distributed, split. There are a lot of ways it can be done without affecting the speed. Technical details would be more on the methods used, like elliptical, whatever, the encryption, etc. The other one was on Aadhaar number. We have two things. One is the Aadhaar Act says you can use the locker which they provide for storing the Aadhaar numbers, which is one, nobody's following it, but that's one possibility which has been given to the Indian data holders, custodians. The other is you can download just the last 4 digits like they do on the credit card and supply that to whoever is asking you for the data. A reference to the that UIDI website will give us that answer. And the bank IT statements is because back to back the government is computerizing. In fact, the old data bill failed because the maximum sharing of data is done by the government. So they rewrote it for themselves. But anyway, we have 6 parameters: the RTO's office, sub-registrar, income tax, power bills, credit card payments, of course, the income tax and GST come in. So these are all back-to-back compared, so may not openly accept it. But if anybody is working with the CAG intelligence at Delhi, they would know it. So all these are back-to-back compared. Today, we don't have a limitation on space or speed to process this information. So any other questions, I'm sure Mr. Raman will definitely answer them. So thank every one of you for joining. Thank Mr. Ravi Viragan, who's our president. We thank all the BOGs who stayed online for such a long time. We thank all the participants who very patiently listened. And we definitely thank Mr. Raman for all the time and knowledge he has shared with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
everyone. It's my pleasure. Thank you.